going to be analyzing a fellow who criticized the scientific method, the genuine, real scientific method. And we're going to analyze some of the things he said about the scientific method. And it's important because a lot of people out there have the same idea that he has, or ideas in general. You know, that scientific method is doing fine, which we call the mathematical method, because all explanations are magical for invisible and intangible entities and phenomena. And so, you know, we don't think that's science. Okay, and there has been no improvement in the last 2,500 years in our understanding of gravity, in our understanding, not 2,500, but a little less than that, in our understanding of magnetism, electricity, the atom, and gravity. Did I miss one? I don't know if I missed one. Anyways, the deal is that I'm saying that we haven't made any progress whatsoever in our understanding of the invisible and intangible entities and mechanisms that Mother Nature uses daily. You know, you drop a pen to the floor, why does it fall to the floor? After 2,500 years, not a single mathematician on planet Earth can tell you the answer, can give you an answer. And the reason is very clear. They can't see or touch whatever serves as a mediator. And so they simulate their physical interpretations with concepts, with abstract mathematical concepts. And people say, oh, I understood, when they did not understand anything. You should be able to explain gravity the way you explain the workings of a car or whatever, any physical mechanism. And that's not the case. They do not explain the mechanism. Anyways, this fellow attacked certain aspects of the theory and of the scientific method that we have. And of course, by indirectly the theory, right, based on it. And so this is where we start. We start with what he had to say this time. We're going to be analyzing a couple points that he said. And here goes. Give me a second here, and I'll turn it on. There we go. Listen to what he's got to say about what he's going to be criticizing, what he's saying that about gravity especially. These are the questions and issues to be resolved in this rejoinder. Have the mathematicians made any progress in man's understanding of gravity in the last 400 years? Does the theory of relativity explain how gravity works?
To act like there has been no new discoveries in the last 400 years about gravity is just plain wrong. The theories of relativity have definitely played a part in furthering our understanding of gravity.
Okay, so that's the issue. And we'll concentrate mainly on the last 400 years. I'm saying that in 2,500 years we haven't figured it out, but 400, if we go with the last 400 years, I think we're doing fine. We're going to be answering the question. Okay, let's see what Newton had to say about gravity, what his tremendous knowledge was about gravity. This is Newton, okay? This is out of Principia, out of his Scholium. Okay, here it goes. He says, hitherto we have explained the phenomena of the heavens and of our sea by the power of gravity, but have not yet assigned the cause of this power. It must proceed from a cause that penetrates to the very centers of the sun and planets without suffering the least diminution of its force. Hitherto I have not been able to discover the cause of those properties of gravity from phenomena, and I frame no hypothesis. His famous saying, you know, he had no theory, no explanation for how gravity works. And he says, for whatever is not deduced from the phenomena is to be called a hypothesis. And hypothesis, whether metaphysical or physical, whether of occult qualities or mechanical, have no place in experimental philosophy, meaning what they thought was science and what still remains to be, to this day, is considered to be science, experiments or experimental philosophy, as he called it then. And the issue there is he's not going to be able to detect the mechanism of invisible, intangible gravity by doing an experiment. And this is where they failed, right there. And he continues, says, it is enough that gravity does really exist. Well, we don't know about this exist word because he hasn't defined it, and no one has in the last 2,500 years. So we don't know what he means when he says that gravity does exist. Okay, what does he mean by that? Does God exist? What does he mean by that? Does a chair exist? What does he mean by that? Unless we define the word exist, we have no idea what he just said. And act according to the laws which we have explained and abundantly serves to account for all the motions of the celestial bodies and of our sea. Okay, so this is the issue. The issue is that he had no clue how gravity worked. So you can say that at least 400 years ago, he was probably the top honcho then, 17th century. He had no clue. Okay, he's staying it there. Fingo non hypothesis or hypothesis non fingo, one of those two, and meaning I frame no hypothesis. He had no clue how it worked. He said, yeah, there's an effect called gravity, and that pulls on the seas and whatever, but he doesn't know how that works, how it's done through space. In other words, right? Okay, so let's fast forward. Let's go to what we have more recently in the 20th century. We had a fellow, his name was Albert Einstein. And he's credited today with having discovered gravity. In fact, this fellow says that general relativity explained gravity, warpage of space, warpage of time, one of those two, or both. And so let's see what Einstein had to say about it towards the end of his life. If you would have caught Einstein when he was 26, when he wrote his first 4 papers that he published in 1905, well, he was a hothead, he knew everything. But when he was about to die in the 50s, he became suddenly a very ignorant man. And here you see why. These are his words, by the way, okay? Okay, and so here it is. This is, you can see the dates there, 54 and 49. All these 50 years of conscious brooding have brought me no nearer to the answer to the question, what are light quanta? Nowadays, every Tom, Dick, and Harry thinks he knows it, but he is mistaken. I consider it quite possible that physics cannot be based on the field concept. In other words, on continuous structures. In that case, nothing remains of my entire castle in the air, gravitation theory included, and of the rest of modern physics. And of course, they pushed him aside over there in Princeton, where he was working the last few years of his life. And he wrote these couple letters there. Also, he says, I have become an obstinate heretic in the eyes of my colleagues, because he did not believe in quantum mechanics, and he wasn't believing even in general relativity anymore. He became an atheist in his own religion. And then he says, I am generally regarded as a sort of petrified object, rendered blind and deaf by the years. Einstein became a piece of furniture towards the end of his life. Nobody paid any attention to him. He was put in a corner there, given a big salary because he was such a big name. And I guess he did more in that sense for the Princeton than Princeton did for him, in the sense that, hey, we got Einstein here, and that was all it was worth. He died not understanding how gravity works, let alone quantum mechanics, which he didn't believe in in his entire life. So this is how it ends, pretty much, because everybody now glorifies Einstein, says, oh, Einstein, yeah, what did he do for science? And they said, well, he invented warp time. That's what he did. He introduced warp time. Now we do everything with warp time. Okay, and so here's warp time, folks. This is Einstein's contribution to science in a nutshell. Okay, we have mass, a concept, mathematical concept, and it bends this sheet, this I guess trampoline or canvas or whatever you want to call it. They call it a fabric. And what is that fabric made out of? Is it made out of wool, nylon? What is that? A rubber band maybe? No, those lines that you see stretching there, those are lines of time and space, but we're going to discard space. Here we're interested in saying that what he's doing, he's bending time. And how do you explain gravity by bending time? I mean, that's okay to describe that mathematically and say, look, every time there's this issue with gravity, time seems to run slower in some clocks that are out there and faster over here and whatever. Yeah, that's fine. Those are descriptions. We're talking about what is the mechanism of gravity. Why doesn't the Earth fly out of the solar system? Why does the moon fly out of the solar system or fall towards the sun? So that's the physical mechanism of what we're trying to get to. And of course, this is ridiculous. This is absolute poppycock nonsense. But this is what people believe today, including this fellow. Okay, so I think he has a goal to laugh at people who laugh at that, at what you just saw. Yeah, that is ridiculous nonsense. Okay, you don't say that the Earth doesn't fly out of the solar system because time is warped. That's a ridiculous poppycock. It's nonsense. It has no validity whatsoever in science. Maybe at the Looney Asylum, but not in science. Okay. So some people came over, and this is pertinent to what this fellow said, and they criticized what I said. And I said I think I said something a little differently, but it was taken out of context. And I was referring to the fact that in 2,500 years, no one has figured out gravity or magnetism or anything of that nature, the invisible things. And you can see here how everybody, went off on a tangent and they started talking about something else. One fellow says, first repeats what I said. So I'm saying that we have made no progress in the last 2,500 years. What was I talking about? Gravity, specifically, the mechanism of gravity, understanding what the mechanism is. What does he say? Says the guy streaming audio and video to the entire world. What is he talking about? Technology. And so again, these people don't even pay attention to what's going on. Here's another fellow, and he says, I'm saying that we have made no progress in the last 2,500 years. And what does he answer? He says, the fact that we can cure illnesses, which were death sentence just 200 years ago, achieve flight, split the atom, put humans on the moon, send spacecraft to every other planet within our solar system, and a whole host of other accomplishments, discredits this assertion completely. Your opinion remains just that, without supporting evidence. So not only he's also introducing technology or talking about technology, which had nothing to do with what I was talking about, but on top of that, he says you need evidence. And what evidence for what? Is evidence there to recruit people, to convince them, to persuade them? What's the purpose of evidence? What evidence can I provide for a mechanism that I'm just explaining how gravity works? I just want to explain why the spoon falls to the floor. Okay? And if I want to explain that, what evidence am I going to present? What evidence do you want? That's the question. What evidence would convince you? I mean, what am I supposed to do? Tell me and I'll present the evidence that will convince you. So no, evidence plays no role in science. Absolutely not. Plays a role only in religion, in Sunday school. Then you need evidence because you're going to be convincing people. You're going to try to persuade them to believe like you do. That's not what we do in science. In science, we explain a mechanism objectively so that people understand. And that's where science ends. What continues after that is opinion, belief, religion. Okay, and another fellow also said something similar. Aren't these ropes just a concept? No, a rope is not a concept. This is not a concept. This is a physical object. Okay, and that's why you need to define what a concept is and what an object is. And he says, what's the supposed difference to former theories? This is just switching out words. Scientific method isn't perfect, but it provides helpful tools to predict things and construct what? New technology. If your theory or hypothesis doesn't predict anything, it's pretty much useless. No, science is useless. Science has no use whatsoever, hopefully. Okay? Science is only about explaining. Okay? Now, if that helps you in some way in your dark basement and you can develop some device because of some understanding in science, well, more power to you. But that's not the goal of science. Science has nothing at all to do with technology. Okay? Science is only about explaining how the universe works. And that's where we have made no progress in 2,500 years. None whatsoever. Okay, none whatsoever. Not a single mathematician out there who calls themselves a physicist, mathematical physicist, right? Can explain to you how gravity works or how magnetism works or how electricity works. They cannot. Because as soon as they explain something, they're going to be in deep trouble. Because they're going to explain it either with concepts, which is irrational. You can't explain a mechanism with concepts. And then the other part is that, they explain it with particles. And the problem with particles, assuming they were real particles, which they ain't, okay, by the way, but assuming they were real particles, what's known as classical particles, how do you explain attraction with particles? And you have to go do, a Ptolemaic explanation and somehow push the two objects together from the outside and maybe take some stuff from the inside. They go through all these weird processes to explain pull via push. It don't work that way. Mother Nature hopefully has a mechanism for pull, and the only way you can pull is putting something between the two objects. Okay, and I have explained, and you can do this at home. I explain that you have two magnets, those two round ones there, right? And again, don't take my word for it. Do it at home on your own, right? And you can feel that there's nothing pushing on my hands from the outside. You can feel that there's a tug already from the inside. And don't take my word for it, go prove it to yourself. The tug is from the inside. And if it's from the inside, you only have two choices. You either put something there that you can't see or touch, or you do it with magic. Okay? And magic involves using what? Concepts, mathematical concepts, which they introduce in lieu of objects. And that's the story for today, for that one.